Hello, my name is Matt Giardari, and I'm with the AWS Marketplace team. I'm the worldwide leader for DevOps, observability, and security. And my organization is responsible for onboarding ISVs into the AWS Marketplace and putting together go-to-market programs so that they can drive attention to those listings. I'm glad that you're here today to learn more about how to sell in the AWS Marketplace. We've seen thousands of ISVs since I've been here for the past 3 years launch their products in Marketplace in what I consider to be a super successful service for AWS. So today we're going to talk about how to sell on AWS Marketplace and some of the best practices that you can take advantage of to drive attention to your listing on our catalog. So before we go into the AWS Marketplace, it's important to understand the thinking that drives our behavior. And to do this, we use what we call mental models within Amazon or AWS. Now, mental models are really our ideas of how the world works. And you can think of it as basically a set of hypotheses. And they're deeply embedded patterns of behavior in reasoning that help guide us on how to be more effective. Now, the first mental model that I want to talk about is what we refer to as the 550-500 model that's present here on the screen. And this mental model really guides our behavior in terms of how we think about enterprise software and how it's purchased by organizations. So when we have a look at large organizations, they'll have an IT budget. And typically that IT budget is, roughly 15 to 25% of that. It's dedicated to software. And so that's the market that we're into, is software. When you dive a bit further, what we find is about half of that software budget is really tied up with 5 major vendors. And you can see some of those vendors on the screen. So your usual suspects. It's the Microsofts, the Oracles, the VMwares of the world. The marketplace it's historically not been a great place to kind of look at the top of the triangle or to get software from the large 5 vendors. They are typically vendor-managed relationships, and these are not the ISVs that we typically focus on when we're selling through Marketplace. Now that being said, there's a little bit of a sea change that's going on in Marketplace, and some of those vendors, not all, but some of those vendors have realized that there are parts of their portfolio that they do want to push through Marketplace, and so we are seeing some motions from companies like VMware and IBM. So even in this mental model we have, the data that we're getting back is that we're creeping up into that top 5. And so, for instance, IBM is putting in some of their data AI products. They have some security products in. VMware has a few of their acquisitions that are in now, so Cloud Health, Carbon Black, and Tanzu. And so it's not just the 5 that we don't look at anymore. We are starting to look at that. And then let's consider what's below the top 5, right? So when we look at the 50 that are below that, these are ISVs that we consider to be strategic in nature. And so what do we mean by strategic? These are typically ISVs where there's a fairly large spend. And the reason that they are strategic is they are helping customers migrate, modernize, and then optimize on AWS. So they're very specific tooling. They might not have as large a portfolio as Microsoft or an IBM, but they're hyper specialized in doing things that are really good from a cloud operating model perspective. So AWS Marketplace is a great fit for these types of ISVs. And if you're that type of ISV that falls into this segment, this is a very good way for you to distribute your product to AWS customers through the marketplace. Then below the top 50 and the 5 are what we consider to be kind of the long tail of the 500. And these are ISVs that are being used across the organization. They're typically used at smaller department levels, and then as they migrate and operate in the cloud. AWS Marketplace is a great fit for these types of ISVs as well, because they give you a great way to sell to AWS customers in a great way to accelerate your transactions. So moving on, this is where we sort of talk about what the marketplace service is, and then we refer to AWS Marketplace as a curated digital software catalog that allows you to find, try, buy, provision, and entitle software and data products. We now have data available through our ADX service. It allows customers to get the software very quickly. They can find the product they're trying or that they want to try by going through the catalog. And then in just a few clicks, they can deploy that software into their virtual cloud environments, and then figure out, look, is this the right thing for me as I'm migrating to the cloud? One of the hallmarks of the marketplace is that we allow customers to pay as they go, or for third-party products. And when customers buy AWS services, so think of EC2, S3, DynamoDB, Redshift, whatever your favorite services are, they're typically buying them in a consumption format. And so customers want the ability to buy third-party software with the same consumption attributes, and then AWS Marketplace is really an enabler, right, to working with those third-party vendors and that community in order to get your software up and accessible in this sort of consumption formatted way. And then finally, AWS Marketplace verifies all these technologies. And this is a great value add for our customers. It's something that you can leverage. If an ISV is selling through the AWS Marketplace, my team will work with you to onboard into AWS Marketplace. We go through user documentation. We make sure that, for instance, your machine images are robust. And the reason we do that is we really want to establish a trusting relationship between, the AWS Marketplace and our customers. As an ISV that, adheres to our standards, this really extends, that trusted relationship through your software to, the AWS end user customer. So let's take a look at the actual catalog. Like we mentioned, the catalog, and we have essentially 8 popular categories that are the most provisioned in AWS. And so you can see, those categories here on the screen. Operating system, security, storage, networking, database, monitoring, DevOps, and BI. So these are not, any sort of exotic types of categories. These are really, if you think about it, these are categories that are used to prop up performance, security, and then to allow for, lots of DevOps practices and so on and so forth. So it's worth noting that this slide is just a sampling of what we have. In these domain samples, you can see, a strong selection of operating system, security, storage players. But this is not the full comprehensive list. We have, 1,600 ISVs that provide value to our customers. And so borrowing from the retail side or the Amazon.com side of things, I like to say that we have a lot of aisles, a lot of store aisles. And, in Marketplace, we want to make sure that the shelves are stocked. And with this rich and continuously growing selection, you as an ISV or data provider are able to leverage the fact that it's a catalog that they are already coming to, they meaning our customers are already coming to for other technologies, and they can now come to our catalog for your technology. So how does the AWS Marketplace work? So this is a bit of a narrative here, so bear with me. But while we share the name with our retail counterpart, Marketplace, I would encourage you to think of the AWS Marketplace as it's sort of an end-to-end supply chain for software. And it's an end-to-end supply chain for how an AWS customer gets third-party software into their cloud environments. When you take a look at the slide and you sort of focus on the left, that's where we have the ISV. And so this is you. And the software or data provider that's trying to sell through AWS Marketplace, on that side of the equation, what we do is provide a set of APIs that allow you to automate your experience in working with AWS. And then in working with ISVs over the years, one of the things that they're really looking for is how to actually, automate that experience of selling to the AWS customer. They want to partner with AWS, but they can't do that in a manual way. They need to have as an automated process as possible. AWS Marketplace is part of that automation story. We provide you with, some really powerful APIs that allow you to publish your software, your data, directly out of your own toolchain environments. So you can think about this as if you have a CI/CD practice or a DevOps practice, you can literally, out of a command out of your own CI/CD pipeline, you can publish to the AWS Marketplace. So that is the sort of automation that we're talking about and the ease of publishing to the marketplace when it is time to bring your software. We then give you a variety of different APIs to let you integrate directly into our billing platform. So this is effectively allows you as an ISV or a data provider to put your transaction on an AWS bill. We then collect all of those transactions across all of our customers, and using your offerings on a monthly basis, and then dispense that back to you in one lump sum every month. So we also give you accounts, access to our taxation platform. So you as an ISV can plug into what your tax nexus looks like, and then the marketplace service will calculate the tax that needs to be collected during each transaction, anywhere in the United States that it's purchased. And so that's a great value add that you get by virtue of selling through the AWS Marketplace. And there's a number of other ones. We can't go through the comprehensive list today, or else this would take up all 30 minutes. But let's move to the right side of the equation now. And this is where the buyer or the customer is located. So we provide a sort of buyer side experience that makes it really attractive for buyers to purchase third-party technologies through the marketplace. So first of all, we deploy the entire catalog to any region where we go live. So whenever AWS opens a new region, Marketplace is what we call a day one service. Marketplace has to be available in that new region on day one. Our customers love the fact that they can get, third-party software and third-party offerings, regardless of where those development teams are sitting. So, for instance, a company might have a team in the U.S., a development team in the U.S. They might have some folks in Europe. They might even have folks in APJ. So they might be a global, multinational corporation, and they can get third-party technology off of the AWS Marketplace, regardless of where those teams are located, in a relatively frictionless way. They can discover, test, purchase, entitle products directly out of the catalog. And then once they've done that, we entitle them to use the product, we tag that transaction, right? And then allow them to deploy that into their virtual private clouds. Once they've done that, we then get the metering and the billing, and all of that consumption basically accounted for on a monthly basis. And then we total that up and we put it directly on their AWS bill. So this is the opportunity for third-party products to actually appear on a singular AWS bill that the customer can then consume and make sense of. If you'll notice, we have the sort of the NASCAR logo on here. Folks are always curious about this. I'm gonna uncover the Volvo sort of logo now and sort of talk to you about the NASCAR versus Volvo sets that we encounter. Now, when we look at the AWS customer, we generally bifurcate our customer population between what we call the NASCAR set and then the Volvo set. And you can think of the NASCAR set as development teams, developers, DevOps teams. They want to be able to get the right tools. They want to get them fast. They don't want folks holding them up, and they really want to be able to deploy software fast. That's their main goal, right? So we have to add features on the buyer side that really satisfy the developers so that they can get the technology that they need and get it really quickly. On the other side of that spectrum is what we call the Volvo crowd, affectionately called the Volvo crowd. This is your centralized, these are your centralized governance teams. Teams like finance, procurement, legal. Now, they want to go fast, but they have to have some predictable way to manage cost and risk around third-party software. So for the buyer community, we consistently add features that support both the sort of the NASCAR-oriented developers, if you will, as well as the more risk and cost conscious Volvo crowd. And to that end, on the Volvo side, we've added, procurement system integration, so that if the marketplace transaction model needs to connect with a system like Ariba or Coupa, two of the really big ones out there, we can integrate into those environments as, the system of record for procurement. Next thing I wanted to bring up in here is a notion that we call private offers, and this will be a running theme throughout the presentation today. But the entire center part of this slide, it's great for what we call self-service transactions, and what we've started to see is that our customers, especially our large customers, have come to us and said they want to be able to negotiate a subscription price. And everything on the AWS website and through our console experience is really pay as you go. We didn't have a great way to facilitate the negotiated transaction between the ISV and the customer. And to address that, about 3 years ago, we launched what we call private offers. And private offers allow you as an ISV to submit and negotiate a transaction directly to an AWS customer. So you can upload your own EULA that is specific to that transaction. And if the customer hits accept, it goes directly on their bill. You can even establish the times that we would need to actually bill a customer. And if you have us bill the customer on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis, an annual basis, a 1-year subscription, 2, 3, whatever it is, you can set this up via private offers, and then we become sort of the transactional billing operations on behalf of you as the ISV. Now, for many customers, this is the preferred way of transacting on Marketplace. If you add in sort of this construct of a consulting partner or a channel partner, soon after we launched private offers, we had a number of our customers as well as, ISVs come to us and say, look, we really like this private offer mechanism, and we like the fact that customers can transact directly with an ISV or data provider, but you're missing a step here. And that step is, look, we have, trusted advisors, channel partners, consulting partners, a number of partners in that sort of indirect channel business. And we want to be able to, complete these larger subscriptions utilizing, the entities that we have always used. So the question is, how do I bring my channel partner into the mix using the AWS Marketplace service? And then to address that request, we launched consulting partner private offers. And then this is a feature that allows you as an ISV to authorize your preferred channel partners for the AWS Marketplace. You can determine the margin or the discount that they receive on the transactions. And they are free to take those terms, and make private offers to all of their customers. Customers get private offers from their preferred channel partners. If they hit accept, then it follows the exact same process that it would in a normal private offer process between an ISV and a customer. Everyone that needs to get paid gets paid through AWS, and margins and so on and so forth are constructed and secured through your relationship with those particular resellers. So it's, kind of summarizing this, the way that you can think about Marketplace is really just, it's an end-to-end supply chain for how you bring software into your environment, regardless if you're selling direct or through channel partners. AWS can provide the mechanism to do so. And then the separate layer on that is, whether you're trying to appease to a NASCAR-oriented developer crowd that wants to go really fast, or you need to sort of conform to procurement, legal, finance standards for larger enterprises, you have the flexibility and the ability to do that through the AWS Marketplace service. So we've effectively sort of broken customers out between, the NASCAR crowd and the Volvo crowd, but, there's really more to it than that. The reality is when we take a look at our buyer community, what we find is that, in an enterprise, there's really a whole bunch of different domains and functional roles that get included in the purchasing process for software, right? So when you sell something like storage, as an example, you're likely going to a storage admin. If you're buying security, which is one of the domains that I own, it might be a CISO, or it might be a CISO's office that you're dealing with. And as mentioned, you're still going to have those centralized procurement, legal, finance teams that are going to want to weigh in on these decisions. So to complicate things even further, if you're selling a line of business software, application software, and you typically have to work with a departmental CIO, and they might have, a business relationship office that liaisons back to that CIO's office. And then you have a whole other set of constituents that weigh in. We also see, the rise of enterprise intelligence teams, and that's where we're seeing things like data lakes. We're seeing, machine learning and big data, and each of these domains have different buying needs. And require different types of software. So we keep this in our minds as a mental model on how our software is purchased, and as different domains and by different stakeholders. And it's really bought by one individual in an organization, but by a team of people. So we need to be aware of that from a marketplace perspective, and to serve all of those constituents across the board. So why should you, as an ISV, sell on the AWS Marketplace? There are a variety of benefits, but there are really three when you think about it that typically surface when we talk to customers and ISVs that sell through the AWS Marketplace. So first, the AWS Marketplace allows you to sell the way your customers want to buy. That's really the bottom line. Our customers are used to buying in a consumption format. As mentioned before, right? They buy AWS services, and those are in a consumption format, and they want to buy our third-party technologies in a consumption format to conform to those expectations. They want to buy your software. They want to put it on their AWS bill, and so that it looks and feels like other AWS services purchased. So by virtue of selling through AWS Marketplace, you're available to streamline your software procurement for that AWS customer. Secondly, it allows you to grow your customer base. So AWS Marketplace, today has around 300,000 active customers using our platform on any given month. On top of that, we have, millions of customers using AWS. And then by putting your products in AWS Marketplace, you're getting access to this new customer segment and an easy way to sell to them. And so this allows you to grow your customer base and get new logos. And then third, we improve the efficiency and the profitability of how you sell. So we found that by virtue of just putting your software on the AWS bill, you're going to be able to accelerate your transactions by selling through the marketplace. We have a number of ISVs who have told us that they've been able to accelerate their transactions, upwards of 50% faster by selling through the AWS Marketplace. So this means that you get your deals done faster, and that in turn increases profitability. So it's important to list in Marketplace, but it's also important to drive attention and awareness to your Marketplace listings. And so, to that end, we've set up a variety of different go-to-market programs that you can leverage as part of your Marketplace listing. Starting with kind of a look at the left side of this particular slide. You'll see that we do a number of things from a digital demand perspective. We're constantly, promoting Marketplace as a channel to buy your technologies. We have a number of what we call thematic campaigns that we run on an evergreen basis through the AWS Marketplace to promote, those types of categories. We typically describe specific ISV examples and then get them to participate in the campaigns themselves, and then support those on a global basis. We run those in North America, Europe, APJ, and we really focus on use cases when we do those types of solutions to take a look. Because we're looking to bring in early stage buyers, right? And because we're looking, because early stage buyers are looking at those marketplace listings, which invariably drives attention, to the products that you put into AWS Marketplace. We also offer managed seller go-to-market programs. So these are fixed, sort of stratified programs, if you will. Advantage, Premium, and Select. They involve, MDF or market development funds. They have specific campaigns between Marketplace and an ISV. And then typically there's some kind of call to action, maybe a webinar, and we have a specific use case that we're positioning. We'll then go and promote that to segments that you want to focus on, whether it might be an enterprise segment, a segment in another geo, a vertical segment, and so on. And it's really specific to individual IVs how we sort of cater and specify these particular motions within these programs. We've also gotten feedback from a number of ISVs who just want to have the means to go fast and get things ramped up quickly, right? But with the benefit of our best practices. And so to that end, the final two buckets over sort of on the right-hand side of the slide, those are really designed for those types of requests. And so we've launched what we call the concierge service, this year, which essentially means that an agency or an agency-led go-to-market service that we've curated for AWS Marketplace will work with individual ISVs. And so we've hand selected a number of different agencies that can point you toward, agencies that are ready and knowledgeable about how to promote a marketplace listing. We can supplement that with our own market development funds and our own content. So you have a concierge type of approach to actually drive your own marketplace listings. Or if you want to get the best practice content, you can also do that by just accessing the Seller Go-to-Market Academy, which is really a go-to-market playbook, is the way you can think about that. And that has all kinds of best practices that we've gleaned over the years working with lots of ISVs. You'll have templates available, wireframes, sample emails, all kinds of curated content that from which you can, select and execute your own campaigns. And you can be confident that we've certified it, right? So this is all supported by us, it's vetted by us, it's validated by us. And we've seen lots of ISVs use this and have a great deal of success with it. So why do customers buy in AWS Marketplace? This is really probably the central theme that folks want to focus on here. We have we've gotten a variety of feedback from buyers over the years. But some of the most popular reasons that buyers or end user customers will purchase through Marketplace is because it includes flexible consumption and contract models, right? They love the ability to be able to pay as they go and buy third-party software in the same way that they buy other AWS services. They also love the ability to have flexible contracts and flexible payment terms that are enabled through the AWS Marketplace service. Our flexible payment schedule allows you to actually define the dates that you want us to bill your customers for your software. You can literally plug them onto our calendar, and then we will put those values on the bill for those months and then bill customers accordingly. Customers are also telling us that they like the easy and secure deployments through the AWS Marketplace. You can deploy these products instantly into your virtual private clouds. This allows them to move quickly, but also have the sense of assurance that what they're deploying is going to be easily available and it's going to work in their AWS environment. And there's a variety of places that you can get third-party technology, including, GitHub repos out there. But when they go through AWS Marketplace, they know that they have, a little bit more secure experience by virtue of running on AWS, and that we've actually curated that listing. And then finally, what makes customers really like the AWS Marketplace service is the consolidated billing from AWS. They love the fact that they can spend put your spend on their AWS bill. This is a great way to really accelerate your transactions because they've already established these motions to purchase. They have already have those budgets assigned, and they already know how to put other products on an AWS bill. So they have purpose-built budgets and motions that are ready to get at your software through the AWS Marketplace service. And so this is really a great way to accelerate your transactions. So you can see, here's a couple of quotes from some of our customers, SimplePay, Goodwill, and MakerBot that sort of testify to these concepts. But those are the ones where, I've worked with customers and ISVs. And again, these are some of the top reasons that bubble up on why customers want to buy through the AWS Marketplace. So going to market faster, one of the things that we enable for you as the ISV is to go to market quicker. And what we're trying to do at AWS is really provide you with an improved experience to release your products, get the delivery, and then tweak adoption. You can think of it as streamlining your flow of customer engagement. And that's really a good way to summarize what this is all about. When you run a marketing campaign, for instance, right, you can drive them from your campaign directly to your listing page, and that provides a great continuum on how to actually market and promote your listings. Marketplace is great in that it also allows you to iterate your products to meet your customer needs. It's very, very easy to upload new versions and change things on your listing page that conform to what your customers are asking for. So the upshot here is that you can get customer feedback and instantly respond. Rather than going through a development cycle, of the normal course that you normally do, you can tweak your marketplace listing as you see fit pretty easily. You can upload new versions within a day, right? So there's speed. Your customers can access those versions very quickly. This also has the impact of eliminating technical debt because customers, especially those using SaaS versions of your product, they can quickly move to your latest versions without move to your latest versions and I guess really focus on iteration and innovation instead of legacy versions of your software. So it's a huge, huge benefit from a customer perspective. And then I mentioned a bit about our curated marketplace experience, a little bit more on that. When we talk about the AWS Marketplace, we refer to it as a public managed catalog. And what we mean by that is we have a couple of different ways that we curate and manage that experience. So first of all, we have a 24/7 catalog operations team that is constantly monitoring our catalog. We're looking for different things. So as an example of this, if there's a CVE, right, for a particular Linux OS, we'll immediately pick that up and we'll look at that CVE and we'll take a look at our entire catalog. And if that CVE is affecting a bunch of listings where that Linux distro, underpins those listings, we will, notify those ISVs and notify customers so that you have this high touch experience and make sure that they're not getting a bad experience through your product. And then we continuously scan the catalog for things like this and to make sure that nothing creeps into the catalog that might not be a good customer experience. And because of that, we're also able to give suggestions to our ISVs on how they can better improve their listings through our operations team. We also provide a great self-service experience. You can submit a new listing, you can update your information, you can do all of that through our marketplace portal. It's pretty simple to manage and maintain these listings. You have the ability, for instance, to sunset your listings if you want, or get different instance types out. So we provide all this information back to you. It's through our reporting mechanisms where we drop your information into an S3 bucket. You can also access this information via API. So similar to a data warehouse, you can get all of that information really easily through an API. So what does the your experience really look like as you're looking at it through your laptop, right? So what does the AWS portal look like? So I'm going to give you a couple of screenshots going forward just to give you a little bit of a sense of the look and feel that you get when you log into the AWS Marketplace portal. So the first thing that you're going to notice is there's about 10 different areas that are relevant from an AWS Marketplace portal point of view. And then these are all things that are really there to help you manage your listings. So you can actually have a place where you're managing your Amazon machine images. You can create an image build through the marketplace. There's content there in terms of how your file uploads, how you manage your images, your logos through the AWS Marketplace. There's a whole variety of settings in there that manage your banking information, your tax profile. We have tabs in there to manage your private offer business, so you can actually see what private offers are out there and which ones have been accepted. We feed marketing data into your marketplace portal, so you can actually see the results of your marketing activity. And we have support information in there. So there are other reports that just give you a variety of information on your marketplace activities. Assets like daily transaction reports that shows how many people subscribe to your product on a daily basis. We also summarize all that information across a monthly report in terms of who subscribed and who we've collected from, data on your revenue, and we also allow you to create those listings, right? There's all kinds of automated tools in there to create listings directly through the AWS Marketplace site. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of self-service for you as an ISV, you can submit new products to the self-service through the self-service workflow, and you can edit those listings all by going into the marketplace and the website experience. And this is a place where we've invested quite heavily in the last number of years for some ISVs that have been, with our catalog for quite a bit of time. We used to do this through a spreadsheet, which was fairly onerous. It was a heavily manual process, and we evolved now to being, after almost 9 years as a service, we've been able to automate a lot more of the self-service capability and a lot of the functionality that you just need to manage your listings. You can also just go into the marketplace portal, and you no longer need to use these what we call metadata spreadsheets to upload your data back and forth. Reporting and commerce analytics. So, as I mentioned earlier, we provide a rich set of reporting and commerce analytics on your marketplace listings. Historically, these were reports that were provided to you in just, simple CSV format. But earlier this year, we launched the ability to provide you with all this data through an API. And so this data, it can either be dropped into an S3 bucket in a format that is specific to you. And then you have the ability to query that data, manipulate, analyze that data with options to pull that into your own data warehouse or your own data lake, or even integrate to your other systems of record that you might have as an ISV. And we're excited about the projects here because we're only going to continue to add additional data elements into this data setup that allows you to access again, all of this via an API, and then have more control, visibility, predictability around your marketplace business. And then coming back to seller private offers, as I mentioned, this might be one of the running themes throughout the presentation here. But seller private offer functionality is also available through the marketplace portal. And so this is a screenshot that basically just shows you how simple it is for you to select the product for which you want to create a private offer. You plug in the AWS account ID of the customer. You'd hit next on the screen. You can upload a EULA, put in the price that's available to that customer, and then set expiration dates and term dates in here. Hit submit, and you're basically done. It's a very easy workflow. It's been highly leveraged by our ISVs, and it's really become a key part of how they're going to market. And it's ultimately a feature that allows you to sell to our AWS customers in a way that they want to buy. But still sell to larger negotiated subscriptions that you ultimately want to drive to increase your overall revenue. Standardized license terms. So one of the things that we've invested in over the years is improving, the contracting process through AWS Marketplace. We have two different contract programs that you have at your disposal, and you can easily see those represented on the screen here. So starting with Standard Contract, Standard Contract is a public-facing EULA that you can incorporate into your listings. What we're doing with this is we're actually driving all of our ISVs into our catalog onto the same EULA. This is a great buyer benefit, by the way, because now when a customer is looking at one of those EULAs, they've effectively looked at it for all of those ISVs that have adopted that particular EULA. Right, so there's sort of a network effect that's in place here, and it really shrinks down the legal negotiation component of software buying. Enterprise contract is really kind of just this. You can think of it as a superset of the standard contract, which is just a couple of additional elements around things like limits on liability and a few other pieces. Enterprise contract is designed for much larger negotiated contracts, and the goal here is providing a higher level baseline so that you have a much shorter legal negotiation for any contract that is driving your marketplace offerings. So these are both available to you as an ISV. I'd strongly encourage you to adopt the standard contract at least. The more ISVs that join in, the larger that network effect is, and the more that you can take advantage of, sort of these shorter negotiation processes and mechanisms. And then access to channel partners on AWS Marketplace. So, going back to the NASCAR slide, I mentioned that, we also offer marketplace private offers through our channel partners. So this is something we launched about, 2 years ago, and it's had a lot of success. So if you're an ISV that's looking to sell to AWS customers, but leverage your channel ecosystem or find new channel partners, I strongly encourage you to take a look at our channel partner private offer feature, which we launched and has really gone big in a really good way, has gotten a lot of momentum and has really made a lot of ISVs and customers that much happier with their marketplace experience. So to get started with AWS Marketplace, it's pretty straightforward. You just register as a new seller. I've done that myself. It takes about 5 minutes. I think the thing that took the longest was actually finding my routing number. So it's very straightforward on how to register. You can then integrate to the marketplace APIs that we've mentioned to submit your product for listing, and then away you go. So it's very straightforward. It's an easy process, and I encourage you to try it yourself because you'll basically see how simple it is to do. That being said, we do have a bunch of what we call category managers on my team that are here to also help you with that experience and to answer your questions and to make sure that you're comfortable with the entire listing experience. And then I wanted to also mention that we do have some training sessions that you can take advantage of. So this particular training session, the AWS Business Professional, this covers the basic understanding of AWS. It's not marketplace specific, but it is AWS specific and will include marketplace. It goes through the key services that comprise AWS, the core business value propositions, and these are mostly online modules that help build the foundation to leverage AWS solutions to customers. And when you're new to AWS Cloud, or you might be an experienced cloud professional, the AWS Partner Learning Pass can help you strengthen your foundational knowledge, develop more specialized skills, achieve accreditations, certifications, and just to really demonstrate your capabilities to customers. So it's a good thing to check out. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you. Thanks for attending this session. Hopefully you learned something about how to sell an AWS Marketplace and about the service itself and sort of the value prop of the service, both to the ISV and to the end user customer. My team's standing by in order to help you out and get your marketplace listing off the ground. So please take advantage of our team. If there's anything I can help you out with personally from an AWS Marketplace perspective, please let me know. That basically concludes this session, and I encourage you to complete the session survey at the end. And we're always looking for feedback to make these sessions better. Thanks again.